Lovely. Thank you. Martin Atkinson of Equinix, Inc. It's very great to be here. Thank you for the warm welcome and everyone that I've met. It's been a great pleasure, and what a wonderful place this is. So I was asked to speak about 21st century data centers, and it's a bit like talking about fruit. You know, I mean, where do you start? There's so many different varieties. There's no one thing, a data center. And I just pulled this image up for the cover here, just to say, you know, more than space and power, yes, it can even be a boat. That particular project never really gained any traction, maybe thankfully. But this is really just an Equinix perspective on what we've been doing. That's more than just space and power. In fact, we use the term internally with a certain amount of derogatory implication, that if we're just selling space and power, where we're coming from, that's us doing a bad job. So this is the only slide I think I've got about space and power, which I'll just, because it's maybe of interest, maybe not. There are now about 247 data centers in 71 metros around the world, covering most places where we can be, and Africa for us will obviously from next year, South Africa for us from next year will be an additional location. We are now currently in West Africa, in Lagos, Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, by virtue of acquiring Main One. But the data centers themselves come in various shapes and sizes, as you can see. The design has been constantly experimented with and improved over the years, and we continue to work on that, primarily to drive down PUE, to drive up power density, and to meet sustainability targets as well. So really that's just kind of talking about what we've got. And as I say, there are 247. For those who might be interested, this is an artist's impression of the data center which is currently being built in Johannesburg. The initial phase will be 4 megawatts. We can go up to 20 megawatts over time, with nearly 3,500 cabinets. What else do I say about it? It's very much a standard Equinix design. Standard PUE will be somewhere around 1.4, maybe lower. Until I've got the full spec, I can't be completely precise about that. The whole Equinix model is very akin to what Terrico has done so marvellously well in South Africa, and that is as an interconnection hub, fostering particularly and serving particularly the internet community, and nurturing interconnection. So network density and interconnection are really, you know, that's kind of the forte for Equinix, rather than wholesale co-location facilities or enterprise hosting. We don't offer any form of managed services. It's all about interconnecting people, but also in facilitating various types of service. So you see on the screen there, we've got Equinix Fabric, which we will be bringing with us. We'll be hosting at least one of the local IXs, Jinx. Then also attached to Equinix Fabric is Network Edge. We won't initially launch with Equinix Metal, but I'll talk a little bit about that in a while. And then Equinix Internet Access, which is basically us reselling a blend of multi-homed internet to a number of upstream providers that will be providing us with internet access. So I can move on from there, I think. Very, very briefly about Equinix. I've got a ridiculous amount of slides, by the way. There's way too many in here, so I've got about a minute for each slide, so I mustn't dally, I'm sorry. We started in 1998 with our first data center, and it was very much about carrier-neutral facility, internet exchange, supporting peering, and the growth of the internet in the early 2000s. And that continued really until, as a company, we started to pivot somewhere around 2012, 2013, not away from internet services, but adding another layer on top, which was focused on cloud, obviously, which is now a big thing for everyone, but also enterprise IT support in a broader sense. And this is where the Equinix Fabric comes into play. we're now kind of providing what we describe as digital services and digital infrastructure building blocks for a very, very broad set of sometimes next generation services. I heard Michael earlier was talking about 5G, and MEC in particular, and control plane, user plane separation for things like automotive, and that is an area of focus for Equinix at the current time. But we'll talk some more about that in a moment. So firstly, this is just a way that I prefer to talk about internet services as the B2C component of the digital economy. I don't know if it's something that other people like to talk about in that way, but I've come to realise that it is the main channel by which people communicate with end users, branches, etc., in increasingly connected vehicles, plant, etc. That isn't going to go away, and the internet's demand for internet services is just going to continue ad infinitum. I show this picture really, I call it the internet iceberg, purely because there's a lot of focus on IX, which is an absolutely essential component of peering and the internet services. But we should never forget private peering as well, because of the fat pipes. And so 90% of traffic flows generally is on PNI, 10% is on IX. So the model itself for internet services is, all three components, transit, private peering and public peering, have to be available, freely available, from a number of competitive providers inside the facilities to both optimize experience and costs to the providers that are delivering the services, such as content originators, etc. So obviously Equinix, having a lot of data centers in a lot of places, we've ended up with a lot of ISPs and also with a lot of cloud and IT services providers worldwide. But it really doesn't matter about the numbers, it's the same principle at work, at play across the globe. And in some respects, I see plenty of signs that, as well as South Africa, other nations in Africa will do very fast catch-up over the coming years. And this is just interesting. The reason that I'm focused on this is because from Equinix's perspective, we meet with all kinds of different regulatory and competitive environments, everything from total incumbent monopolies, where one or two PTTs rule the roost, and regulators are related in some way to the carriers, to completely deregulated markets that we in the West and also here in South Africa to some extent we're all used to. But it isn't necessarily the norm, as I know you're all aware. But what it translates into in terms of interconnection growth is shown on this slide. On the left-hand side, as we look at it, is the revenue. From two different metros across the globe. One which is totally was positively regulated. It's not completely deregulated, but it's positively regulated, if that makes sense, to nurture full competition between various upstreams and also downstreams for the content origins which we host, as opposed to the very, very low slope at the bottom there, which is an incumbent tied data center. The reason I'm showing these is not because they're kind of figurative. The numbers are removed for confidentiality, but in terms of the actual slope of those graphs is charted from two Equinix metros, one where we have a huge problem with incumbents controlling who comes into the data center through pricing strategy, and the other one which is truly open and neutral. And unfortunately, as a carrier-neutral facility, we are very much at the mercy of incumbents where there isn't enough competitive choice in the market. So I thought it would be good to just show this, as this is a genuine experience of what we see as Equinix in some locations. I'm pretty confident we won't see it in South Africa, but parts of the Middle East particularly are a real challenge on that. So this is just an indication of how it works, and I'm not going to dwell on it very long, but basically any access points, either downstream or upstream, are over monetized, and that keeps competition out. And that really is the death knell of the digital economy, as well as obviously suppressing interconnection growth. That's on the public B2C side, if you will, internet services and service delivery. On the private side, business to business interconnection and digital infrastructure, which is kind of where Equinix has pivoted to from about 2014-15 onwards. We've built this kind of thing called Equinix Fabric. I originally joined Equinix in 2011 as a concierge for Equinix Cloud Exchange, as Equinix Carrier Ethernet Exchange, which was a complete dead donkey because most carriers don't want a data center operator to build their NNIs for them, which I could have told them, but thankfully they gave me a job. And after they decided that that project wasn't going to work, they morphed it into Cloud Exchange. Then the acquisition of Telecity Group led to us actually having WAN links to clouds remotely and then connecting the various nodes together. And although it was very much an existential crisis for Equinix, through fear of competing with carriers, we went ahead and did it in the end. Basically what we've done is we procured MPLS wholesale bandwidth from our carrier customers / partners, who then provide the underlying bandwidth, and we have an SDN platform that manages layer 2 circuits from 50 meg up to 10 gig over the MPLS infrastructure, and then our procurement team just manages the contention ratios and procures the additional capacity as needed on the MPLS links and purchases additional diverse links as and when required to maintain adequate redundancy. Last week, I believe we turned up circuits from Dubai, which was a big cause for celebration for us because it's been very difficult to get the incumbents to agree to us procuring wholesale from them to actually then deliver this agile layer 2 SDN service over the top, which they cannot provide anyway because they don't have the facility to do it. So at least now everyone's happy, and we'll see how that goes. So although Dubai isn't shown connected here, it is now connected into somewhere weird like Genoa and Milan, I believe. Geneva and Milan. But it's hopefully the start of a very happy success story. Lagos also will, over time, be connected. And obviously, when we launch here in Johannesburg, we'll be procuring wholesale bandwidth on some of your networks to run the MPLS services that will support Equinix Fabric virtual circuits into Europe and across the rest of the world. Most of the locations, depending on the pricing, we go for a flat pricing structure as well to try and make it as easy and pain-free for the customers to turn up these services, which are billed on a daily basis. So they can turn up a circuit in 5 to 30 minutes, and they can turn it down the next day and only pay for a day's use. So although it's actually per megabit per second more expensive than what could be available on a 12-month or 3-year contract, it's still very cost effective for someone who has a need for agile services, or at least turn up a service quickly and then turn it down when they've got the real thing from the provider locally in 3 months' time. In addition to Equinix Fabric, we've got these other things called Network Edge and Equinix Metal. Network Edge is just a very simple kind of Equinix bare metal service where we run hypervisors and we'll spin up various kinds of op systems and disk images for customers that want to run things like virtual routers. So we can turn up Cisco CSRs. It's very much enterprise class. It's not aimed at carriers or service providers. But some managed service providers are using Network Edge to turn up things like firewalls, Fortinet firewalls, Juniper firewalls, VPN headends, as well as I say, the very simple kind of low-featured routers as well. Equinix Metal is the jewel in the crown, and without giving you a lot about Equinix Metal, it comes out of Equinix's acquisition of Packet, the company Packet, and they have now deployed in 28 metros worldwide, with another 5 in the pipeline. And it really is the jewel in the crown. It's a very complex bare metal offering. It's not just a simple server. It has ASICs installed. You can run OANM to your devices as well, so you can run virtualized CPE. You can actually run core routers, not necessarily full global routing table, but certainly very highly featured. And it's a bit of a workhorse, so it's also peered. When Equinix Metal, which won't be here day one, but when it comes, which it will be peering a couple of 100 gigs on Jinx for sure. And then we'll also be taking transits for it and it also has availability of P&I. So you can kind of run it as a telco or an operator, service provider, or an OTT player. You can run it as own infrastructure, either permanently on an OPEX basis, or it can be run on an OPEX basis until the real kit arrives that you've bought. But in a time of silicon shortage and getting through customs control and stuff can be a challenge. So it overcomes the service time to service delays that can incur. Equinix Fabric, I prefer to think of it this way. There is actually a link in this, I believe, at the top. The building blocks of digital infrastructure on the top here. If you want to look more at what's entailed in these digital building blocks, you're very welcome to just check it out from this slide. Basically, what's attached to Fabric is Fabric connection to multi-cloud. There's also connection to multiple service providers. So again, network as a service is a service off of Fabric. This is very much for things like Ethernet services, MPLS services, not so much transit, because there is the typical way of doing that, which doesn't need to be fixed or changed. Some, such as Verizon SDI, Colt ODI, have agile networks that are software defined, and they can actually API into this platform, so it's possible for customers to turn up their own network services off of Fabric, either for last mile delivery or WAN services or metro services. It does mean that Equinix Fabric building blocks, for anyone in the room who is an internet service provider that has a point of presence in a third-party co-location facility, whether Terraco, ADC, or any other, can actually deliver these services to their customers. Now, I obviously understand most people will have access to public clouds already as part of their portfolio and selling it to their enterprise customers. This is a very agile way of delivering that service, but in addition, although the marketing speak here says 500, it's around 400 and something SaaS and cloud providers worldwide that are attached to Fabric in multiple locations. So it's possible to reach just about anything somewhere in the world. And then we've got the network edge devices, which is the virtual devices I already talked about, and a number of service providers that are running private cloud offerings. Also, NVIDIA Launchpad AI as a service is available on Equinix Metal, Kubernetes, Red Hat, Linux, and Amazon Elastic Cloud Services and Google Anthos. You can flex workloads between the private cloud instances running on Equinix Metal and the public clouds. We are in addition recently hosting virtual routers to support user plane function for multi-access edge compute, which Michael was talking about earlier in the context of 5G. The CUPS piece, that is control and user plane separation, does mean that every application can have the user plane function in a different place, and in fact it's imperative that it does so for performance, cost and latency reasons. So we're playing our part in that whole future-looking stuff, which may not be big in South Africa now, but I guarantee it will be coming at some point. Then we have a number of SASE providers, and finally we offer Equinix Precision Time, which is a 50 nanosecond accuracy clock, which is available through Fabric. I'm going to go very quickly through these at a ridiculously fast rate because I'm sure I'm running out of time. But these are various service providers that are using Equinix Fabric today in all sorts of ways that really it's a delight, because they're coming to us with the use cases and then we turn them into case studies for them. So Orange Telco Cloud, which is their SD-WAN service, is running on Equinix Metal in various parts of the world that previously were off-net to Orange. Some of this is again due to procurement lead times and due to problems with customs control and getting stuff into the country installed and turned up. And on Metal they were able to turn up their service, which is now fully functioning as far as I'm aware, in multiple locations that would have been a struggle for them otherwise. So that's the first partner which is using Equinix Metal. Oh, sorry, I've gone one too far. British Telecom has a service called Connected Cloud Edge, which they launched last year. That runs on Network Edge. So basically they white label this. One of the things I have to say is that there is no particular sales motion, productization, that is excluded by Equinix in any way. So we will support any kind of sales motion, resale, white label that a telco or partner wants to adopt with us, and we'll support them fully. So Network Edge bears the BT brand as BT Connected Cloud Edge, and they are offering a fully managed cloud service to enterprise customers, which is both multi-cloud and also extremely agile. Colt ODI, as I said, last mile service. This is a global solution involving Colt delivering last mile services in Japan. In Hong Kong, it's actually Hutchison. In the UK, it's Colt again. And we have a managed service and managed service provider managing the infrastructure using Fabric backbone actually as the SD-WAN, and with 2 diverse connections into Azure in Asia Pacific. EU Networks are doing a high-powered computing thing for researchers in life sciences at Cambridge University. The upper limit of functionality on Equinix Metal exceeds anything that's available on public clouds, so it's ideal for things like high-performance computing, particularly where there is a need either for low latency or for confidentiality and security. Telstra is fully API'd in, and they provide TPN, which is an all-encompassing resale of Equinix services from their own portal, and it's basically white-labelled. So, Nokia at Mobile World Congress were giving an example of enhanced mobile broadband, EMBB, which again was talked about earlier, delivering 8K streamed content from a football match, I think it was, with Elisa, the mobile operator, with very low latency and extremely high end user quality of experience. Finally, on Network Edge worldwide, Equinix has introduced the Edge developer platform so that various developers can actually emulate mobile networks and contest applications across a very wide area if necessary, so they can emulate roaming and performance under those circumstances, which would otherwise be very costly and time consuming, and it can be turned up very quickly on Equinix Network Edge. Enhanced mobile broadband, don't really need to say anything about this. With 5G comes lots of streamed cat videos, and although network slicing and enterprise stuff on 5G is much talked about, it's still very much a nascent market, whereas people are streaming like crazy video at ever-increasing quality, and so the need for mobile operators to uniformly come into line, maybe on what ISPs have been doing for some time with peering locally on IX and with each other, may come into play. We certainly hope so. Even in Europe now, with some mobile operators such as TIM in Italy and T-Mobile in the Netherlands, we've seen the old practice of hairpinning traffic in and out of the upstream provider to a remote location for peering, and that is disastrous for 5G, really. This is about Equinix and sustainability. I'm not an expert on this at all. I'll probably use all the wrong words, but I think the important thing is that Equinix is fully subscribed to this, and I know we've got a panel about this in a minute. What I'd like to say is that I believe the company, and this is not marketing at all, it's just responsibility, has moved to a power procurement policy of 100% renewable energy for all of our data centers, and we're at 95% so far. And so we need by 2030 to be at 100%. We're doing various things to get there, changing the temperature at which we operate our data centers to fit with the American ASHRAE standard of 27 degrees centigrade as the upper limit. So we're running everything at the upper limit, which makes it quite uncomfortably warm for humans, but at the same time it reduces the cooling requirement by about 10%. We're also moving across to different forms of cooling, including passive cooling, adiabatic cooling, using water. Where water is constrained or in short supply, we're using novel forms of air cooling. We're also, in terms of energy, looking at solid oxide fuel cells, away from conventional. Obviously, when we launch here initially, it's going to be diesel to cover us with, typical backup. But over time, all of our data centers will be moving to whatever's most efficient that we can procure. The benefits for our customers, of course, is that they can use us to pass off their scope 3 stuff. So if we become their supply chain and we've got good green energy records, then they can pass off their scope 1 and 2 by outsourcing to us. And that's something that may not be a big thing here now, today, in South Africa, but in Europe it's becoming mandatory to have a green energy certificate, and access to affordable finance even depends upon being able to flourish one of these certificates. The thing that I'm most proud about at Equinix, and I'm going to get stopped in 2 minutes, is Equinix is the most remarkable company that I've ever worked for in terms of multicultural, gender diverse, you name it. We all just kind of mix in together. I've never worked with so many smart people. I'm sure maybe you guys have done so for a long time, but certainly in my long career, I've never worked with such a wonderful mix of people from all kinds of backgrounds, all pulling in the same direction. So it's been joyful. And this key mantra here of, every day, every employee should be able to say, I'm safe, I belong, I matter, isn't just mere words, I have to say. That's it, really. The only thing I would say is that the ESG, the last bit, was all to do with global responsibility and partnerships. And you've seen what we do as a company now in this crazy whistle-stop tour. It isn't just about customers, it is about partnerships. We need service providers, and we hope that you will come to like us and use us as well to grow your business, but also to, more than anything, do things that are really important, like close the digital divide, stimulate the digital economy, and bring about the next big change for the benefit of everyone and not just for a few. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions or comments? Come up to the mic and your name. Thank you.
Oh, hello.
Thanks. Mark Donahue, Africa. You said you bought main one in Lagos.
Yes.
So you mentioned that there's no connectivity, but there's the main one cable into the main one.
No, we acquired the entire company, so there is a cable system, there is a terrestrial network, and there are a series of data centers. So Equinix is particularly focused on the data centers, and what will happen over the coming years, and not too long a time, is that there will be a divestiture of the cable system, and either total divestiture or a separate holding company set up for the terrestrial network. Over time, it's not Equinix's core business, and it just doesn't sit at all with our business model. So that's what's going to happen over time. I'm not the right pay grade to tell you over what time, but the terrestrial network will increasingly become more and more important, I think. The subsea cable system, there's plenty of people that will be liking to buy it and acquire it from us, so I suspect that will happen at some point.
Okay, so just a question, another question. Your differentiator coming into Johannesburg as opposed to DC, is there anything you can talk to about that you feel is going to make you stand out in the market?
Well, as we said there, is that the standard model is the interconnection model. It includes internet services and all that brings with it. But, sorry, go on.
I understand, so I saw obviously all of your add-ons, but I'm talking, let's talk power, let's talk PUE in South Africa, or you've got a major issue.
Yeah. Okay, well, I did ask about this. I did ask because I thought the question would come up. So firstly, our backup will be batteries followed by redundant diesel. In terms of the actual power supply itself, I'm told that it is exempted from load shedding. It's a high voltage supply. I know very little about it. Data center design is not my thing, but I asked this many months ago of the team that was procuring the various services and the location, etc. So I understand it shouldn't be as prone to load shedding and should be more stable.
Are you allowed to share the exact location?
Well, I would if I knew it exactly. No, I'm hoping we can find it tomorrow. Ed's going to take me, and I'm being genuine, seriously. But I'm hoping Ed will take me tomorrow and we'll try and find it. And then hopefully next time I'm in town, I'll be able to say more about it. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, give us a second here while we set up.
Well, you want this? Oh, this is a souvenir. Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to have put another one. No, I have to put another one in the pocket here. That's for.
Oh, is it somebody else's? Oh, okay. I didn't realize. Is this the recording? Ish. No, go for it. Take it. Sorry, this is 7. So.